Hi, I'm Dan Nestle, and you're listening to A Shark's Perspective.
Welcome back, and thank you for joining A Shark's Perspective. I am Kenneth Kinney, but friends call me Shark. I am a keynote speaker, a strategist, a shark diver, host of this show, and your chief shark officer. Your audiences, whether it be your employees, consumers, corporate boards, shareholders, some international audiences even, expect brands to say something about darn near everything anymore, even when it may not have anything to do with the core of your brand. They don't want a communications team to be an announcement mechanism for the corporate brochure anymore. But when you get out there in the field, it becomes a bit of a landmine with too many opportunities to make a misstep. So what is the best way to communicate in today's corporate world, especially when all you want to do is to communicate to make an impact? Dan Nestle is the leader of communications at Lixil Americas, which is part of a global Japanese company. And he's also one of the 30-plus co-authors, along with Mark Schaefer, of the most amazing marketing book ever. And on this episode, we will discuss American standard in the Japanese toilets, internal and external corporate communications, writing a book with 30-something friends, communicating with social issues, ESG, corporate governance, creating a social impact, water efficiency, basic sanitation, staying in your lane, some pelagic sharks, towns in Japan, Brad Pitt and Bullet Train, and a lot more. So let's tune into a communications leader with a communicative shark on this episode of A Shark's Perspective. Dan, welcome to A Shark's Perspective. If you will, tell us a little bit about your background and your career to date, please.
Well, thanks, Kenneth. It's really great to be here, and I'm so glad that we connected a while back and have been doing these things together. I am so my name is Dan Nestle. I am the leader of communications for Lixil Americas, and Lixil is a global Japanese company specializes in water and home technology products and services. And, you might recognize us from our major brands in the Americas, American Standard, Groa, sometimes pronounced Growy incorrectly, and DXV, and our tile brand called Enax. I run communications. So it's all corporate communications for Lixil. Corporate responsibility, well, it used to be called that. Now we call it impact and societal impact, ESG related things, employee communications, external communications, the whole spectrum. But my background is in marketing and communications for many, many years. I worked in Japan, lived and worked in Japan for 16 years in my formative days in my 20s and 30s, then moved to Australia for a year with a global company, then moved back to my home in the States here in New Jersey about 12 or 13 years ago. I've just been making my way through what I think is a really wonderful career in communications and marketing since.
And what an obvious transition in your career: Japan, Australia, Jersey.
Yeah. Yeah. The way to New Jersey is through Australia or something like this.
Exactly.
I've taken a lot of circuitous paths. That was a literally circuitous one. But yeah, I sometimes, early on went where life just took me. And a little bit of impulsivity perhaps in my career choices, but I have no regrets. I think it was I've had some wonderful experiences all the way through. My family's loved it. And, here we are today.
Well, last time we spoke, and you probably don't remember this, or I hope I helped you forget it since then, but I remembered as we were talking about the brands that you've worked with, I was like, oh, I've got one of those toilets. And it's
Yeah.
like people don't realize how big of a name the American Standard is. You see them everywhere.
A billion people, we reckon, have American Standard toilets or have sat on them at one point or another. And that's a global brand. We also have an incredible global brand called Sato Toilet, which is our social business. Let's call it. It is a for-profit business, but it is aimed at uplifting hundreds of millions of people out of the most abject sanitary conditions that you could imagine. So the primary markets are Africa and Southeast Asia, and other areas of the world where there is no sanitation. So it's basically a $5 toilet that gets, we teach the communities how to not only be more sanitary, but also build the enclosures. So we bring masonry to the area, we bring fundamental construction capabilities, and it builds a whole new supply chain and value chain for those local communities and those countries. So we're really happy about that.
Yeah, we're going to talk a lot more about that later. I'm
Yeah.
so glad you brought that up. But now you're an author as well.
Yeah, that's right.
What was that experience like? You and
33 other people.
yeah,
So yes, I'm the author of one of the co-authors of the most amazing marketing book ever by Mark Schaefer and friends. I am and friends, one of them. The book is just it was a delightful experience, and I know that a lot of authors don't say that about writing, but the reason is, when you have 35 people, you have to write in a sort of, you have to have a structure and a schedule, and you have a team of people. That's basically you're all together, you're all in it together. So frankly, the whole thing was my idea to start with. And, Mark said this in public, so I don't feel too bad about saying that. I used to be too humble, but now I'm owning it. But we have this great community of amazing marketing and communications professionals, mostly marketers. And, I said, why don't we try an experiment and do a community generated book? So, it wasn't quite that simple, but once we determined guidelines, like each chapter is a certain length, each chapter follows a certain pattern. You have to be conversational and offer up advice that people don't get in most other places. Once we sorted all this stuff out, I think it was off to the races. I was also editor of the book, or at least for 1/3. I shared that with 2 other people. So of the 33 authors, I edited 12 or 13 of them. And in the process, just really got deep into it. But we published in June, just a couple of weeks ago here, as of the time of this podcast, and it has been just a joyful ride. And the audiobook is great too. It might be unique in that each chapter is narrated by the author, so it's the only audiobook that I know of that has 34 voices from 10 different countries and various accents.
amazing.
And all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I was going to do something similar, but with 2 other people. This is maybe 3 years ago, and the coordination of it seems like such a hassle. It's hard enough when people work with one other author, which I've done. But you start adding additional people and elements, it becomes very interesting. So because you're in both the US and the global role, what's a day in the life at Lixil like? What do you do after a cup or 2 of coffee? I'm assuming that's what you're drinking this morning.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I can't get on my day without coffee. So a day in the life is never the same. Like, there's no such thing as a day. Like, it seems to blend because, I'm working across time zones. I'm working across teams. There's no very typical day, except that, so I'll wake up, do my usual, morning stuff and have my coffee. And then it's really jump into whatever the issues are of the day. A lot of it is answering a lot of questions. Since I lead the team, I have to get on top of where everybody is and what's happening. But I am, I guess, depends on who on my team you'll ask whether this is a good thing or a bad thing. But I'm much more of a hands-off kind of delegator, although I do jump in when I need to. And my team is just killer. They're such great. They're an amazing group of professionals. So I'll check in on what's happening with the different business units and with our internal, external programs. I'll meet with our agencies once or twice a week. I will, on a given day, I'm, probably checking in with Japan at least once or twice. I often have meetings in the evening to discuss, some of our global issues. There's a lot of writing and editing of what is happening, around the world with Lixil. And I do some of that myself, but I'm more of the kind of further down the approvals process, checking, making sure we're in the right direction. A lot of ideation meetings, so we have a project, we have a campaign, we have something that we need to get off the block and, wrap up within 2 months. What do we do? I mean, it's, a lot of it is also bringing some of the disciplines of marketing into the communications world. So I find myself being almost unique in that respect among my team and my colleagues. So, try to bring a little bit more of, I suppose, a campaign mentality and a more of a kind of, I guess, analytics and measurement practices into what we do. So every day I'll be checking to see what's going on on Talkwalker to see what's happening, try to find different trends. But the other great thing that I think, and if it's coming across that my day seems kind of unstructured, when I don't have meetings, it kind of is unstructured. And I've spent probably 20%, maybe more or less of my time, depends on what is happening in the profession, on trends in technology that are going to affect my team and our jobs, but more than that we can take advantage of and connect closer to the business. And one of my kind of directives is to bring the communications function closer to the business so that we can add more value rather than be seen simply as an announcement mechanism throughout the organization. So these things take time. I'm formulating different, I guess, thought pieces and strategies for how we're going to, for example, adapt AI or, kind of incorporate larger communications strategies vis-a-vis creating communities around purpose, et cetera. And, being a business with so many units and different, which all have sort of different audiences, there's always something happening. So I know that sounds a little bit maybe out there and jumbled, but frankly, that's how I think. So,
Sure.
so, there you go.
Well, one of the things that, to your point that comes up, and you're trying to balance Japan and the US and the world markets, if you will. And I think as someone who's also lived overseas multiple times, and I think you probably have the same appreciation for this. And I've worked for and worked with Fortune 200, which have obviously much bigger audiences. When you think through a communication strategy for your company, how much of that is the balance of figuring out how much you get into the issue of the day? I mean, you talked about studying marketing trends, but sometimes I think back often of some advice somebody had asked me to give when George Floyd happened.
Yeah.
And now something's going on in France, and you start thinking about how much you comment. Not every company, though, and I've had this conversation with a mutual friend, needs to necessarily think of their communications as like Ben and Jerry's does. Ben and Jerry's is not the largest ice cream maker in the world, but you would think they were because of how they talk about everything that happens in the news today. And that works for them, but it's a balance that you got to figure out with how much the corporate culture will stand up for or stand with, especially one that's overseas versus the issue that may be affecting them. And when you talk about getting closer to the business, there are a lot of people that are, once you get closer to it, you start hearing the customers a lot louder.
Yeah.
It's an open-ended, nebulous question, but I think you know what I'm trying to talk about.
Very timely and sort of, a little bit of a minefield there, Kenneth.
Absolutely.
Appreciate that.
But, a little bit? No, this is third rail inside of a minefield.
Yeah, I mean, especially,
but it's something we all go through.
Something we all go through, and it is. Look, I mean, as the communications lead, this is really falls right into my area. I will just say that I come from the Lixil corporate communication side, so more of the work I do is on, it's B2B and B2B2C. The brand communications, like what the American Standard teams are saying to their customers, is a little more removed from my remit, but of course we're all connected. I think there's no answer to this, right? This is something that brands and communicators are learning over time. And just like anything else, there's a human reaction and then there's a market reaction. And sometimes those are two different things. And whenever you have people involved, it's almost impossible for those people to separate their own stance or their own bias from the approach that they wish to take at work. And, I think we're seeing that with some of the backlash to some of the brand moves that we've seen recently, with Bud Light, with Ben and Jerry's, with Target, et cetera. Now, none of those issues are of any concern to me and Lixil, to be frank with you. I mean, we're a company, everybody needs to go to the bathroom. Everybody's got a kitchen. Everybody's got a shower. So, I think we're trying to just, I wouldn't say stay in our lane, but I would say that the issues that are important to us are we've gone out with are, sanitation, hygiene. There's 100 million people that need to stop basically pooping in open fields. Right. And have clean drinking water. We also are very big on gender diversity and gender equality, and working towards uplifting. I hate saying that word; it sounds too Darwinist, but more about giving opportunity or providing the opportunity for women to rise within the company and even in the communities we work with. So these are the important goals to us, and that's what we're focused on. Brands that feel like they need to wade into these very contentious, kind of discussions. Look, sometimes your employees kind of demand it, right? You have employees, and we forget that employees are a major audience. And what you say internally and how you talk to your employees, I'm not saying it should be different than what you say externally, because you should be aligned on your values. But there's a time and a place for different discussions to happen, right? So not everything should be your essentially your room, your bedroom, where you're open to say whatever you want.
Well, to your point, and that's what I loved about what you just said, is that nobody knows, and it's true. I mean, none of this stuff, we have a crystal ball, can figure out what's going to happen next. But one of the things I find so often, and I love how you tailor this at the end, talking about not necessarily staying in your lane, but you know your values. Yeah. And a lot of people always ask, should I react to this situation that has nothing to do with me? And then that's a whole open-ended discussion, because that is a minefield. But if it's part of your values, or if it's part of your core DNA, absolutely. I mean, that's what I love about how Lixil has leaned into with helping the world with clean water and toilets in desolate communities that don't have any good running water, and how bad that is in so many third world countries. That gives you a lane to talk about that without necessarily thinking you've got to over communicate on what happened on the news today.
There's plenty for us to focus on in the areas that make sense for us to focus on. That's not to say that we don't care about a lot of the issues out there today, but what we're seeing, especially now, like I said, it's sort of there's blowback, and it's like a pendulum that swings. And my personal opinion, not necessarily that of my company, but my personal opinion is that things are coming back to a more kind of quiet mean, where brands need to be careful. Where especially the up and coming generation of consumers and our future business leaders, the Gen Zers, even the Gen Alphas, they don't have patience for what we call performative activism, right? They can see through bullshit, if you don't mind me saying that, Kenneth. Like, they can just see through it, and it's not going to be. You can change your logo, you can put words on a social media feed. If you don't have the action to back that up, if you as a brand, even if hey, this is the way we feel, but if you can't act to back it up, then sometimes it's just best to take a seat and focus in on the areas that you can act and focus in there.
Yeah, I saw something on the news the other day, and I thought it was timely, and half the people on one side loved it, half on the other hated it. Yeah. And somebody that I'm friends with posted something on their social channel, said, "We got to go tell the world this is bad. You got to put it on your website. Make sure every business knows that you support this cause or that, or don't support that cause." I went and looked at their website, because I knew them. Days later, they hadn't done anything to it. And it feels like it's just, everything's a trigger now. But when you're in that role where what happens here that could trigger somebody, whether they're watching MSNBC or Fox, has nothing to do with what's going on in Osaka, Japan, with employees there.
That's right.
It's such a balance of how we communicate to people all over the world.
And we also, I've learned that some employees are much louder than others, right? Yeah. And you can't, if you're a small company and your office is like all of your employees are in one specific geography, then you can probably take a very specific tact to the way that you respond to things. If you're a company like ours, where you have 5,000, 6,000 people across the United States, Canada, and Mexico, I will guarantee you that all views are represented internally, and that, if you favor one because of the world we live in, it's often interpreted as a zero-sum game. If you favor one, then the others think that maybe you're not favoring them. Or if you say one thing, maybe you're against the other. It's not that clear. So there are nuances to everything, and we're in a world that doesn't quite understand nuance all the time. So I think it's very important to focus in on where you can make a difference, where your values are, and what makes sense, right? And address address your employees as they need to be addressed whenever they come to you. There's no easy answer is the point, right?
Describe a situation where internationally you had to use some of that nuance.
Mm-hmm. Um, I can't refer to any specifics necessarily, but this happens sometimes with social media use within the company, right? So where, here in the Americas, and, legal policy, like privacy policies, when you work for a corporation, global corporation, these are very important things to kind of understand. And, whenever you do something externally, you need to always kind of obey the strictest level of whatever the privacy rules are, or the social policies are. So, for example, if you're communicating externally to, like, if you're building an email list, you got to go by GDPR, the EU version, or the California rules, right? So you have to, even doesn't matter what the rules are in Mexico or in Japan, like it has to be the strictest. With social media, so the example you're asking about, there were a lot of contentious issues over the last several years. And we had something happen, or something had happened in the Middle East at one point, where some of the employees in Europe, decided to comment on it, and it wasn't even that it was a negative or a positive comment; it's just that the fact that they were commenting on it, and the European kind of approach is that no, you shouldn't be commenting on anything unless it goes through the proper approvals process, and et cetera. Whereas that for individual social media, and this was not corporate, this was an individual person using their social media account. In the States, it's different. And it's not the same for every company, but we would tend to say, we'll trust you to represent the brand. And look, if you say something that's off kilter, or if there's something that might be reputationally difficult, our first step is to just have a little private conversation with you and say, hey, you realize that our logo is on your profile, everything you say can be interpreted. What do you say? Can you mind taking that down or making a change? And look, in every case, everybody's been like, oh, I didn't understand. I didn't know that would happen. But that's the approach, the kind of assumption of what the employee's role is in that situation is different from region to region, and Japan is like a completely different animal anyway, because Japan has, the way that they communicate externally about issues is different from the beginning anyway. Yeah.
Well, talk about structuring what you do with your stories with corporate responsibility, because I think that's one of the things that I've seen you guys do well, your company do well, is you talk about making better homes a reality for everyone. And I know we've discussed this before about how hard it is to find good running water in places like India. I remember seeing it there. We take so much of this for granted, but corporate responsibility, a lot of that gets a very frou-frou perspective often, because it doesn't always balance in with the DNA of the company. And you guys,
that's right,
that really balances well with what Lixil does.
Yeah. And in fact, we realized that too. Corporate responsibility sounds such a passive thing. Like, you do it because you're responsible to do it. You do it because, it's going to get your Dow Jones rating will go higher, or your ESG rate, the investors will like it. So we've pivoted away from even using the word corporate responsibility. I probably shouldn't even said it earlier. We're now talking more about impact, and the impact that we make and that we want to make. And, we're fortunate to have the kind of the walk to back the talk, especially when it comes to sanitation and hygiene, and advocacy for water efficiency. And, for example, our people, let me back up a little bit. So sanitation, hygiene, water efficiency, also labor shortage, right? This is a big issue, especially in the US with the skilled labor shortage. This is a major thing for us because plumbers are critically important to not just to us, but to everybody. We are doing a lot of programming in that respect. You asked about building stories. It's based on the experiences that we're having, not on research too. So we take whatever elements that we know, And we put them together into the way that any journalist or any kind of researcher would build a story, and find the topics that we think resonate most, but also match that purpose of making better homes a reality for everyone everywhere. And when you think about better homes, a home doesn't necessarily mean the physical building that you're living in, right? It could be, your office is a home in some ways. Your home could be what a home looks like is different for a person renting an apartment in New York or in Amsterdam or in Nairobi, right? Versus somebody owning a palatial home in the suburbs of New Jersey, or somebody owning a very small, kind of, prefab in, somewhere else. So home is a very different thing to everybody. We owe it to our customers and to our employees to sort of live that out. Say, okay, look, if we're actually making better homes a reality, whatever kind of home there is, it has to get better. So that's, if we have that behind us, we can create really good stories, but we're not creating anything out of whole cloth. We have the boots on the ground throughout the world to see how this stuff is happening. We, our leaders are out there, talking to customers, talking to communities. We have a new-ish kind of division, I'd say, and I can't really mention anything much about it now, but we had a really excellent experience and an ongoing experience in Lowndes County, Alabama, where many of the folks living there have a horrifying sanitation situation. It's you'd be surprised that this is happening in America. America, there's over 1 million people who do not have access to proper sanitation, and you couldn't build septic tanks there because the geography, the geology, you couldn't bring in plumbing because the sewage lines weren't going there. So you had to figure out different ways and different solutions to get these folks into some manner of clean living. And we helped them find something. We put some different technologies together with some other partners, and running a pilot in 100 homes there, where we've given them American standard toilets and such. But really, that's not where the main thrust of this is. The main thrust of it is in the sanitation part, where there's no longer where we can build this solution. There's no longer essentially shit dripping into the front yard and backyard, right? Raw sewage everywhere. You don't want that. So, we're that itself, watching this all happen, how it unfolds, creates an amazing story, frankly, because it's true and because it really, really reflects our values. So we're doing a lot of those kinds of activities.
Well, first of all, let me say Roll Tide, and Alabama's not, the entire state's not like that.
No.
No, and
That's
I know
right.
you didn't mean that either, but it is.
Lowndes County, very specific area. Yeah.
Yeah. I know what those communities look like, and they're,
they need help. They need a lot of
they
help.
need help. I mean, we take so much of this for granted. And then like basic drinking water, look at Flint, Michigan, or Jackson, Mississippi.
That's right.
Not a toilet issue, but you'd be surprised how many issues are closer to home than you think. But
those issues exist so Lowndes County, Alabama is one place, but right here, southern New Jersey, Hawaii has a horrifying issue going on. The Navajo Nation is having some issues, like Michigan, everywhere. Like it's in your backyard, places that you wouldn't think. It's there, and here in America.
To complement you and your team, one of the things that drives me bananas with a lot of communications people that I work with or provide counsel to is that they try to over communicate their role in the world with things that really aren't part of their company. They're not boots on the ground. Maybe they give a little money to a charity, but they're not involved with it. Or they try to go all out on a social happening of the day and over communicate it, but they're not part of that when the attention's not there. So to make this part of your core DNA, and it really fits perfectly into your brand, it's interesting. And I'm curious how this emerged with the team. Like, where did this corporate DNA become? Like, you don't typically think of people in Japan at CEO level thinking about toilets in
Yeah.
India or Lower Alabama?
Well, I mean, having lived in Japan for, for 16 years, I can see it. Like I can see how a Japanese executive team would really truly want to do good some elsewhere in the world. I mean, there's it's almost part of their DNA to be a giving nation of people, and I have to
Well,
give
and
so much credit.
I asked that
Yeah.
wrong because I
No,
now that you're
yeah.
saying that, some of the nicest people I've ever
Yeah.
met in my entire life were when I was in Japan. Like it's
Sure.
Tokyo is one of it's the cleanest, nicest people in
Yeah.
a big city you'll ever meet. But maybe it's not necessarily Japan, Germany,
Well,
wherever.
no, but I think I was going to address, but I think the part of your question that was really, like, I think we're spot on is that, to get that into the DNA of a business is a very difficult task, and it takes effort, and charisma, and a lot of proving of models, and kind of pilots. And I think in our case, look, Lixil is a new company, um, technically speaking. So Lixil is only, I want to say 13, 14 years old. I should know the number. But, it was founded not too long ago as a merger of 5 companies in Japan. And that, I think, gave our CEO, Seto-san, gave him this kind of incredible opportunity to achieve some of the visions that he wanted to achieve, right? And as he's learned over time, as we've learned over time about a lot of the problems that are out there in the world that we have the capacity to solve, we have a very strong culture of innovation that seeks to solve those problems. And not everything that we try is obviously gets out into the public. And but it is part of one of our values, one of our behaviors is called experiment and learn, right? And experiment and learn isn't always about, hey, let's just find a better spreadsheet program that's going to help us, get to the end of the day faster. It's really about, all right, what are the big issues facing the world now, the world of the business? How can we create something very new and very interesting and it's different that can take our business into different directions and that can really kind of make a lasting impact, which incidentally is also self-serving in some ways because that guarantees the continuance of our business as well. So like doing good for others is doing good for us. There's no conflict there at all. And I think it takes a mindset to make that happen too.
Well, one last question before we cut to the close is,
Sure.
how has this resonated with sales? Not necessarily you talked about it as a campaign, but all of the do good is great up until the board meets and then sales are tough. And I don't mean just your company,
Yeah.
but if you were giving advice for somebody stepping into this and
Yeah.
wanting to do more social responsibility,
Yeah.
knowing that they also have to drive a lot of sales, what advice would you give them?
Well, as Mark Schaefer might say, the value of content that nobody sees is precisely zero, right? So if our salespeople aren't seeing this, aren't understanding that this is happening, it will not make it to the customer. It will not help them. It will not help anything at the front end. You can't over communicate, but at the same time, you have to communicate. You have to get this message out to your salespeople. I don't know what the right formula is because different market trends, different market cycles will take your salesperson's mind in different directions, right? They need to sell, they need to make, earn revenue, and sometimes they don't necessarily have the time or the personal space to, integrate messages about, impact and responsibility that are perceived to be like miles and miles away from where they are, or that are quite distant from the customer who needs a faucet now. So it's more about how do we fold it into all the messaging and educate our sales force so that it becomes part of what they do and what they say. And we're on that path. We're trying, we're getting there. We have occasionally run like straight up campaigns where, if you buy an American Standard toilet, somebody will donate a certain amount to Sato, or we'll create some Sato toilets and then donate those to someplace in Africa or wherever, or it was a UNICEF program. But that was a while back. we do that as well. But generally speaking, I think it's about making sure that that message is clear, and then being able to, to bring it to the language of that front line, like what matters most. So giving a presenting, here's our impact strategy to somebody on the front lines is not really going to be helpful. Right. But on the other hand, if you say, here's the three things that you need to know that are matter, that are important, and sort of, treat it like a marketing program where you need to get in front of folks with the most important pieces of information and a hook. I think that probably has a little bit more power to get to the sales.
Fair enough.
Force.
Dan, I ask this of everyone who appears on the show. What is your favorite kind of shark and why? So lots of sharks in the news showing up in your part of the world, in the Jersey, New York area right now.
So I am a shark fearer or shark lover. I don't know. But I always had this fascination for, is it called the pelagic white tip? Is that what it is?
Oceanic white tips. They're pelagic sharks.
Yes. Oceanic white tip. Those are the ones that they say were responsible for, a lot of the horror and death of, like, the USS Indiana, I think it was, or Indianapolis. Was the Indiana? The Indianapolis? Yeah. The
Indianapolis, USS Indianapolis.
Yeah. Of Jaws fame. There's because Shaw told that story. But seeing Shark Week and seeing over many years, that's the one that kind of sticks with me. I love that one. That one fascinates me. And also just the mako, man. I mean, how can you not admire the beauty of a mako shark and but fear, the bull shark is the thing that inspires the most fear in me. Having lived in Australia for a while, I was always checking where, is the water murky today? We're not going in.
So oceanic white tips, trivia, they're known as sea dogs because of some behavior, but they're also nicknamed the dark night of the ocean because they mostly hunt at night. But if there's an opportunistic prey during the day, they're all over it. You will find them when you do. They've been overfished, like a lot of shark species, but they've been overly fished. But you'll often see them in packs. They hang around boats, which are annoying. Bull sharks I see all the time. They're aggressive and annoying. Mako are fascinating just because of the speed.
Yeah,
but I love them all. So
yeah, hence shark.
Exactly. Well, Dan, it's a special time in the show. Are you ready for the 5 most interesting and important questions that you're going to be asked today?
Oh my goodness. I hope so. Yes.
All right.
Shoot away. Fire.
You work for a Japanese-based company and you've visited and lived there and travel there on occasion. Your choice to visit, Tokyo or Kyoto?
Tokyo.
Why so?
It's just so much more exciting. I love Kyoto. I've been there a few times, and apologies to anybody who's a huge Kyoto fan, because I'm a Kyoto fan. But, if I'm going to go temple to temple and see the beautiful stuff, yeah, I'll go to Kyoto. But if I want to go and hang out and live and be with my friends and my family and just enjoy, it's Tokyo every time.
Kyoto's beautiful, but yeah, you want to see well, you live in New York, so or close to it.
Close enough, but yeah, I just there's something about the beating heart of Tokyo that is just like 14 New Yorks put together. It's just
it's what if New York could grow up and get clean and take a bath. That's kind of what it would look like. Maybe
I like to think that way. Yeah.
All right, so we've talked a lot about water, and you're a Nestle and not a Nestle guy. For those trying to say his name correctly. But let's talk about Nestle waters. Which would you rather drink, Nestle Pure Life or Perrier?
Ooh. I would go with Nestle Pure Life. I just plain water is fine. Look, you're highlighting my inability to make decisions here, because I also enjoy like the sparkling water. If I'm like, I'm not a huge fan of sparkling water by itself, but big gin tonic guy. I like sparkling water drinks. I don't know if I'd use Perrier for that.
As long as they don't throw the bottles in the ocean or in, the plastic bottles, I'm good with it. So, all right. This is an odd experience question, but using a toilet in Australia or using a toilet in Japan?
Oh, Japan, hands down. My gosh,
It's a
everybody
weird
out
thing to
there. This,
talk about, but if you've been there, you'll realize it's a much better. And
I think,
settle the myth.
yeah,
Does the water flush backwards in Australia?
it does. It goes the other way because the Coriolis effect's the other way. Yeah, Japan toilets in Japan. I mean, has anybody seen the recent South Park with the Japanese toilet? It is a hysterical episode and not untrue at all. I mean, these things are amazing, and I will say that Lixil is one of the is one of the big makers of the most space age incredible toilet experiences you could possibly have in Japan. They're not huge here, of course, because we don't have electricity in our next to the toilets, and they're expensive. But I would absolutely go bidet if I could.
Oh yeah, but I think Brad Pitt even talked about it on Bullet Train.
I think it's getting. I think we're on to sort of a secret, slowly building trend.
Exactly. All
Yeah.
right. So if you were writing a communications story for your company and you're talking about another bathroom project, would you rather talk about showers and bathtubs or toilets and bidets?
Well, we love all these products and all of our categories. I would go with showers right now, showers and faucets and tubs, just because, you know, there's a lot more variety in them. And also, actually, if you're going to do, look at your options for water efficiency and for experience, there's a lot more you can do, I think, with the fittings part of the whole business. So there's some great shower products coming out in the near future, but I personally I am, the shower is my favorite time of the day almost, right? So I would go shower over any of those other things.
Yeah,
For sure.
and you got to drive to Canada to go get a high capacity toilet in your part of the world anyway.
Well, right. And that's okay though. They're going to get, we're working on even lower gallons per flush as part of our march towards better efficiency. And sometimes that's a really great development. But
not always the most popular.
Not always most popular for some reason.
All right. Number 5, and the most important question that you're going to be asked today is biscuits or cornbread?
Cornbread.
Why so?
Cornbread. I can eat more of it probably. I mean, biscuits, don't get me wrong, good biscuit, smothered in gravy, little sausage, yum, sausage gravy. But cornbread is just like, I think it's more versatile, a lot. You can have it more times. You can have it, actually you can do biscuits with breakfast as well, but I'm
the same way you tried to answer Tokyo and Kyoto.
I know,
it's like, I don't want to offend biscuit people, but
no, I know, but I'm sticking with cornbread. I'm a big cornbread fan. My wife makes terrific cornbread.
So. Fair enough. All right. So Dan, where can people find out more about you, listen to the Dan Nestle Show and much more, and get a copy of the book?
Yeah, well, the Dan Nestle Show, of course, is where you can hear me more and my guests. Things keep developing there. So it's just dannestle.show or wherever you listen to podcasts, go look for the Dan Nestle Show. The book is the most amazing marketing book ever, available on Amazon, on Kindle and Audible as well. It is just a terrific book. I hope that everybody goes out and picks one up right now. You can find me on LinkedIn. Of course, just look for Daniel Nestle. But my LinkedIn URL is Nestle. That's the only URL I was ever able to get. That's just Nestle. Obviously, some much more influential powers grabbed Nestle.com way before I could in the 90s. But I think you can find me there. Nestle, Twitter, DS Nestle, everywhere else DS Nestle. And I hope to interact with you, connect with me anytime.
Awesome. Dan, thank you again for being with us today on A Shark's Perspective.
I appreciate it, Kenneth. Thanks so much for having me.
So there was my conversation with Dan Nestle, the leader of communications at Lixil Americas, which is part of a global Japanese company. And he's also one of the 30-plus co-authors, along with Mark Schaefer, of the most amazing marketing book ever. Let's take a look at 3 key takeaways from a conversation with him. First, love the conversation around sort of staying in your lane. As a bit of a cynic, I cannot stand when corporations take a stance that you can tell they clearly don't believe and it's not part of their DNA. But it's not easy when employees and consumers and corporate boards and shareholders all want something different from a company in the stance they take on a social issue. Throw in a multinational corporate layer to that equation, and that's a whole other minefield, especially considering when people here may not know what horrible thing has happened there or vice versa. So what do you do? What do you say? What do you communicate? What I always suggest is first answer if it's part of your DNA. That doesn't mean if it's not, to stay away from it. It simply means that the audiences will make more sense of your stance if they understood, and now understand, who you as a brand were and are. Then communicate it loudly. It could be a minefield, but at least if you know where you stand, then you'll know how not to stick your corporate communications foot on a landmine, or at least in your mouth anyways. Second, same goes with corporate governance. If you say you owe it to your customers and your employees, then make sure, as Dan and team have done, to have it reflect through their core DNA. His company screams water and plumbing and sanitation, and that's where their social responsibility is as well. Love Dan's interpretation, too, on how to communicate, not over-communicate it across the brand. He made a great point in that it will not make it to the customer unless you communicate it enough to your employees. Third, I mentioned something about a different brand taking a stance on something and screaming to the world via social media, of course, that you needed to take their stance too. You had to post it on your social as well as have it reflected on your own website. Their company, though, didn't walk the talk, and it was nowhere to be seen other than a couple of posts, and it was nowhere on their website. This is what people don't want you to communicate and not execute. Smart brands know how to take a stance and make an impact by making it part of their core. We all need to do that more. Got a question? Send me an email to kenneth@asharksperspective.com. Thank you again for the privilege of your time, and I'm so thankful to everyone who listens. We talked a lot about water today, and it's time for me to dive back into the water. So please join us on the next episode of A Shark's Perspective.